Shalom, welcome to Eretz Israel, welcome to Erev Shabbat. Here, Parshat Toldot in the Zohar Kadosh, the holy book of the Kabbalah, the source of Jewish mysticism, metaphysics, and transcendental understanding. Parshat Toldot, the Parsha of the transition from the patriarch Abraham to the patriarch Yitzhak, moving forward, of course, in the creation of the next generation, Yaakov. These three generations represent three levels of relationship to God, three levels of attachment to the divine. And each of these characters, these patriarchs, had their own tests, of course, and their own struggles and challenges to achieve what they achieved. But all of it was because of their relationship to Hashem. So whatever you want to do in life, it's good to start there. Start at the top. Start with your essential holy self deep inside. And that, of course, is your spark of God. And we'll work that out, and it'll take you where you need to go. Trust me. So Abraham, the Zohar tells us, Karata Abraham l'Amo, when Abraham came to the world, he embraced the moon and drew close to her. Now the moon, of course, is a metaphor for God's kingship in the world. Just like every night we see the moon pass across the sky, and sometimes in the daytime too, it's this idea of a crown above the world. That the moon is a sort of a crown, and it rests about us in a transcendental way. And so Avraham drew close to the idea of God being king. And he drew that idea close to himself. And, there were other monotheistic people all the way back to Adam himself was a prophet. God spoke to him. God spoke to Chava. They were prophets. But it's different when you embrace the concept and want to share it with the world. And that's where Abraham brought a new path into the world. It's not enough just to recognize God. You've got to reach out and give that away, because that is something you cannot hold. It's too big to hold. But we can pass it. And each time we pass it, we bring God greater glory into the world. But that was Abraham. He got close to the kingship and he drew it close. When Isaac, the patriarch, came into the world, Achidba, he became one with the kingship. He unified with the moon. He took it in deeper. And he attached himself to the idea of kingship of God in the world. So you get close to somebody, and then you get really attached to them. And that's another level of relationship, where it's no longer you and me, us and them. It's now just us. You see the transition there? Something happens. We lose a piece of ourselves and gain a greater piece. And that piece, of course, is the consciousness of Hashem unifying with human consciousness to create something really new. Okay, but and he drew God closer with love. And so Yitzhak is this transition from the beginning of a relationship to where you really discover love. When you go out with somebody, you get to know them, you get close to them, it's starting to feel good. It's starting to be interesting. Something's happening here. The next level, of course, is where you say, I really love this person. I want to be with this person. So that's the level of Yitzhak Avinu. Kavat Amar, and he brings a pasuk, Smolo tachat l'roshini, that his left hand was under my head. The divine presence says that Yitzhak, of course, which is the left arm in the tree of life, the power of Gevurah, the power of strength and might, the power of resistance. This power was the hand that the Shekhinah describes as, when you put your hand around somebody's head, you're really getting close to them. You're getting in there, Dalet Amos. There's no social distancing here. Okay, but Kevan Data Yaakov, now when Jacob, the forefather, the third of the patriarchs, the one the rabbis call the greatest of the patriarchs because of his test, because he was going to have 12 children. Now anybody could tell you that's a big test, right? But 12, not just 12 children, but actually more than that, but the 12 sons that became the 12 tribes. It was like, can you imagine, you have an idea to start a country, and next thing you know, you have 12 states. Each son wants his own state. You could take New York, I'll take Colorado. Each guy wants his own state, and each guy gets his own state. That means his own character traits, his own economy, his own relationship to you, the father, the family, and to God himself. And so, building a nation is much more than just building a family. And so this is the idea of Jacob. But now, not only did he do what his father and his grandfather did, he drew close to the kingship of God. He attached himself in a state of oneness with the kingship of God, but he brought the moon to the sun. Now, what does that mean? Okay, we can accept that the moon is the symbol for God's kingship in the world. So what is the sun? Well, the sun is the transcendental life force. It is the metaphor beyond God simply being king over the world. It's the idea of God illuminating every spark of the world, every speck of creation. And that there's something about being king, and then there's something about being a creator. It's a different relationship. You could be king and own every museum in the world, but it doesn't make you the painter of one painting, or the sculptor, or the author. But when you're creator, when you're the life sustainer, which the sun essentially is on a physical level in this world, then you've done something else. You've brought the kingship all the way back to the beginning of creation. You've united primordial reality with present reality and said it's still all one king. But now we've brought the life force into the system of God being king over humanity and the entire world. So Jacob caused what's called in the tree of life the union of the microcosmic form of God, which we call Zer Anpin, the small face, with the Nukba, with the feminine aspect, which is Malchut. So we attach Malchut, kingship, to the small face of God, and now we've performed a greater union than even Yitzhak Avinu did. So Yaakov Avinu is called Bechir Avot, the chosen of the fathers. He had the most important job, because from Jacob, of course, went out these 12 tribes, and then Joseph got the job of being the transition leader of the people until they became a nation, and ultimately under Moses formed a solidified identity that led them out of Egypt and into the promised land. Now, when this happens, the Zohar goes on, then Yaakov is shalim, he's whole, he's complete, bakol sitre, on all sides. In other words, a human being has many sides, right? We have our intellectual side, our emotional side, our physical side, we have our spiritual, we have our material, we have all kinds of traits and qualities. In Kabbalah, we're not trying to be the best at anything, okay? Kabbalah erases the idea of competition, especially spiritual competition, because it's the most absurd thing. When I first got to yeshiva in Morristown, New Jersey, a few decades ago, they said, I'm more humble than you. That's not a very humble statement, right? I'm more nullified than you. That's ridiculous. If you're nullified, you don't talk about your fact that you're nullified, right? If you're humble, you don't talk about it. It just is. It's known, it's clear by your behavior. You don't have to talk about it. So this is just one trait, and we have all these traits, but in Torah and spirituality, Jewish spirituality, the goal is not to be the best. The goal is to be whole, complete, that you have all the traits that you need to be a good, well-balanced human being. And that idea of balance is very hard to get nowadays, because we have to have a wholesome mind that thinks good thoughts, and a whole heart that processes emotions properly. And of course, and then the kingship is the idea of expression of power into the world, that we need to know how to express ourselves in the world in a way that's useful and effective. We don't hurt too many people. We don't step on too many toes, but we get done what needs to get done. So Jacob was Ish Shalem. Yaakov Ish Tam means that he was Shalem. He was complete with all the traits he needed to be a father, to be a son, to be a grandfather. All the different roles that a person needs to take in your life. So some people are good at being fathers, but they're not good at being businessmen, or they're not being good at going off to synagogue and doing the service of the community. everybody has their strong points and weak points, but the goal is to strengthen our weak points and to become whole with all the points, and then you've got a complete world. The Sihara itnahirat, and then the moon shines because the moon has no power except what it gets from the sun. So Jacob effectively brought the power to the kingship from the sun to the moon, as it does every night. Now, v'taknat v'tresar shavatim, and then he, of course, had this power to establish the 12 tribes that would become the 12 really people states of the Jewish people, that each tribe got their land, as we said, and their qualities and their work, etc. Now, what's interesting about this metaphor is that, as usual in Kabbalah, it follows this romantic or I want to say sexual relationship. That's a little bit on the edge of language, but it really follows this idea of the union of a man and a woman, and that the more we understand the relationship of God to the world, the more we can perfect our relationship with our wives and our spouses, that we understand our roles, we accept our roles, we know when to talk and when not to talk, when to get in the way and when not to get in the way, when to stay out of the kitchen, and when to go to the garage. Each, in a relationship, we have to have these spaces for each other. And then when we do that, we have space for that third party, which is, of course, the divine presence. So, it says that when a man marries a woman, he brings her under the chuppah. There's three people there, Hashem, with the man and the woman. And if we're so tight together, we don't make room for Hashem amongst ourselves, then all of a sudden it gets a little too tense, And so, but when we have Hashem in our relationship, and if I have a problem or discussion and something needs not to work out, I don't need to take it and throw it at my wife. I need to throw it at God, right? I need to turn things to the upper authority in any relationship, and then all of a sudden it works better down here because you take the pressure off. This, by the way, is also the idea of having a rabbi in your relationships, because you don't have to have confrontational reality with the people that you love and care about. You turn to a higher authority, and then you share that, and people respond properly. And without the sparks of conflict that we know that just creates strife and unpleasantness and all the things that unfortunately we have to live through to make it in this world. But God should bless you all with a holy Shabbat. And the Shabbat, of course, is the time where the divine presence now is really with us, because we don't do anything but, dwell in God's presence. Now you might say, well, that's a very nice phrase, Avraham, but I don't feel the presence. Well, if I start turning things off, I might feel more presence, Turn off the TV, turn off the computer, turn off the radio, turn off the computer. There's a lot of ways to make room for Hashem, and this is how we do it on Shabbat. And we make room by saying, I don't worry about Sunday on Saturday. On Shabbat, I don't think about the coming week at all. And the past week, I only look to it as something that built the day that we have now. The things that we did during the week that prepared us for this beautiful day that's coming, that are the things that actually we are celebrating by bringing them to the Shabbat and use them to celebrate Hashem. So we should have song, we should have dance, we should have high discussions and practical insights, and share the good and share the joy and the laughter on Shabbat. And then after Shabbat, after Havdalah, you take a little time, then we can start to get ready for the week. So we should all be blessed with this consciousness and with this levels of the union of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob with the divine, and build the relationship in such a way that we cause the moon to shine. God's kingship will shine in the world because you're making the link between the sun and the moon. God bless you all. We'll see you next week on Patreon and all the platforms with more Torah. And hopefully, we're getting closer to the goal, folks, whether we know it or not. And when it feels most dark, it's the light's about to shine.